Everybody welcome. And don't let it rain, because we're lucky. It's beautiful. It was a beautiful day, and there are rain clouds and predictions, but we won't have it today. So welcome all of you. And I love you, and I want to begin first to mention again our symbol for don't act as if you're the only one on the planet, and recognize other people. And at the moment, I would like to keep this one for every session until the day comes when somebody in our country will stand up and say, there are children being taken away from their families. And when somebody comes and says, this is not what America should be. And when that happens, then I can make a painting of children being reunited with their families. And then I can put away the painting which shows are not speaking to others. Am I loud enough? Good, 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 okay. I spoke to Harvey about wanting to show people being included. And since I will always begin with children or adults who have problems with the rest of the world not recognizing them, and that we're going to make them be recognized. But he's going to be sending me photographs of more of the surfing groups, because that's important. Until then, I will show you the things I've already done. I wrote, he ridiculed at work. He had a nervous breakdown. Since then, he stopped speaking. I returned a year later. It was at their Freedom Seder. I had tears in my eyes as I listened to him reciting a blessing. The director said to me, this is our aim at AHRC. Because they recognize them as a human being. And that's what we're going to be doing. This is what this program will be about. It'll always begin with Now, my nephew David, who has helped me so much during my stroke, and I said that I would speak about it today, and I will speak about healing. Because now when you're isolated, think of aches and pains which you might not even notice in the normal world. But now, because we're isolated from each other, they become important. So my son gave me good instructions. He said, don't skip details. Don't jump over things. These are people needing to hear how they can heal. So in 1973, which was 40-something years ago, I think, no, I wrote this 47 years ago. Am I loud enough?
Hernan, can you hear?
Be louder, okay. Oh, keep talking, okay. I wrote this. I am well again. Behind me lies a long and twisted road, and somewhere along that road lie the pouch which I have left behind. Like a snake, I shed skin after skin and left each one wrinkled and dry along the roadside. The skin of my habits, my lifestyles, my assumptions, and my beliefs, and I am well again. I want to explain to you that if we are having problems emotionally or physically, nobody can heal us except we ourselves. And what I had to do was to get rid of my habits and my assumptions and my beliefs. And one of them was I had always been afraid to ask for help. And suddenly I couldn't give help to anybody because I was helpless. And I will read as little as I can and speak instead. But I hit my knee and tore a cartilage. I went to the doctor, the family doctor, and he began what later, when I was healed, I found out was called the slingshot method. You throw everything at the patient, and some may work and some may not. The swelling of my knee went down, but the lupus came. And according to Dr. D'Angelo, who cured me, it was the slingshot method that gave me the lupus. Goodness knows how many pills I was taking. And there was, when I finally went to an arthritis specialist, they gave me more pills and more pills and more pills. And this is why I wanted to speak about gratitude. My husband and I, and later on our children, had been volunteers in the prisons. And the volunteers used to meet in our house. At that time we were working at Sing Sing, and my children had summer vacation, so they were there too. And one of the volunteers called me. His name was Fred Ciccarelli, and he said, "Hedy, how is your knee?" And I started to cry, and I said, "It's not my knee anymore. It's my whole body. I'm paralyzed. I have a wheelchair. I can't walk. My fingers are so swollen, I can't blow my nose." And he said, "Have you seen a rheumatologist?" And I said, "Quite a few." And he said, "My daughter is married to Dr. Mastroli, and he's a rheumatologist, and he works with Dr. D'Angelo. And Dr. D'Angelo cures people with unknown diseases, with the diseases which have not yet been figured out. And would you like to see him?" I said, "Yes." So he said, "When do you want to see him?" Now people, specialists, don't ask you, "When do you want to see me?" They tell you months ahead of time. And I said to Fred Ciccarelli, "Immediately." And he said, "Okay, he'll call you." And Dr. Mastroli called me immediately. And he said, "When do you want to come?" And I said, "Right away." So we made an appointment for the day after. And I forgot the instructions, and I forgot the papers of where to go. And my son, who was taking me, said, "Mom, I discovered the roots of your illness. You don't plan ahead. You think you're doing things and then you forget the papers." And I realized he was right, and that has been a problem all my life. I thought of things, but then didn't do them. And so we went to Dr. D'Angelo. And Dr. D'Angelo asked me questions that I never had heard of before. I remember one of the questions, he asked me so much about Panama. No doctor ever asked me that before. But he said, "Did you ever have nosebleed?" And I said, "Of course, all children have nosebleed." But it's here in America, just recently, when I found out all children do not have nosebleed. But one of the things about lupus is you bleed easily. And now that my skin at 90, 91 is so thin. If I knock myself into anything, any door, blood comes. So Dr. D'Angelo knew 47 years ago that I should be careful about bleeding. And I had a friend, Kathy, who had a friend who was a nurse. Now, first of all, I want to say, if I would not have been a volunteer in the prison system, I would never have met Fred Ciccarelli, who indirectly gave me Dr. Mastroli and then Dr. D'Angelo. And I remember when I found out that I was in a wheelchair, that I was so very sick, I touched my knee and I said, "What did I do to you? Why was I afraid to protest against the doctor who wasn't healing me?" And I found out that I was so afraid of authority, and that had happened to me during the Hitler times. I was afraid of any authority because a friend said to me, "If you do not say no to that doctor, then I don't ever want you to speak to me again. I want you to call the doctor and say you're leaving him." And immediately my brain went into another session. It said, what lie could I give her to say that I did go? I can't say no to a doctor. Which meant that we bring illnesses on ourselves if we don't have courage. And I started to think my body had never been mine. It was what I lived in. I hadn't earned it. I hadn't paid for it. Like a miracle, it had joined me at birth. It had run for me. It had seen for me. It had given me hands to draw and to paint with, and lips that translated my thoughts. But it was a separate being, and it had only lent itself to me. It was all I had to act as a carrier. Who is this I? Who lived within it? What was my body and what was I? And which carried me? And how do I define this illness? How do you begin to find your illness? And I began to think. I read a book by Adele Davis, and she said people who have arthritis are twisted and angry inside and gnarled. Twisted, gnarled, angry, but I was such a happy person. How could I blame my arthritis on anger when I was so happy? But was I always happy? Couldn't I be happy and a happy person and still be angry? And I began to think, first of all, I need you to forgive me for reading, but I had written everything down. And I'll keep reading and speaking. Of course, why did I have to be only one? Why did I the other? Angry, oh yes, angry hurt. The tears came up inside of me when I accepted that. The art students who didn't pay and left. The shambles the house was invited into the cleaning. Something was wrong with that too. It couldn't have been that one-sided. Whom had I failed? How much did I promise people and then hate them when they wanted to collect? and why I had always been afraid to ask for help. Suddenly I had nothing with which to help anybody. And understanding how to live in a spot was the next thing I had to deal with. You who are isolated in your own homes, does anybody need you? How do you live if you cannot help anybody? Think about it. I once asked Dr. D'Angelo how he knew what would cure me. And he gave credit to being familiar with the disease. But it was not only that. When he worked with people, he allowed them to know what they were doing. I knew everything that I was doing. I heard it on a television program. Lupus is a disease in which the body attacks itself. Perhaps the mind attacks the body with rage, a child beating its head against the wall, suicide, alcohol, overeating. My nephew David told me that he and the two others, when they were separated, they would beat their heads against the crib. Who are we that we separated 3 children and not tell their parents that there were 2 others? Until that film was made, 3 Identical Strangers, I didn't understand my David. It needed somebody to explain what was done when these children were taken apart. And now we are taking children away from their families. What is the reason if they are not allowed to cross the border? We don't want them here? And maybe if we take their children, others will not come? But they don't know despair. They don't know that when your life is going to be taken in a dangerous place, you will go anywhere. In a way, I am doing these lectures because what bothers me the most right now is that children are taken away from their families. And maybe now we can't take them, so we put them into institutions, which are dissensions. I am speaking out because people spoke out for me. Panama spoke out for me. Panama sent us visas and rescued us from Hitler. And it all ties in with getting well and gratitude. Out of my gratitude, I have to speak for those who are being taken away. Does anybody want to ask any questions?
I have a question. You mentioned Kathy and a nurse, but you didn't tell that
Oh,
story.
I must tell that. Kathy told me about a friend who is a nurse. And that nurse taught me so many lessons. She called me and she said, "Call me anytime. I know about the illness that you have. Always call me. I will always answer." And she always did. And she even told me about this amazing book. Joni, could you take a photo of this?
By Dr. Max Warmbrand. How thousands of my arthritis patients regained their health.
Okay, I think the book is out of print.
It is, but you can get it on eBay.
You can get it on eBay. Okay,
Yes.
Let me tell you, that became my Bible. That and that nurse and Dr. D'Angelo. Because it taught me how to meditate. It taught me how to exercise. I obeyed everything. Everything in that book I did. and I became better. And what really was the most important lesson for me was when I was well again, I called that nurse and I said, I want to be friends with you for life. Would you come to visit us? Let me make dinner. And she said, I was there when you needed me, but I can't do more. I can't afford friends. You needed me, and I gave you all that you needed, but you don't need me anymore. And what I learned from that was how to say goodbye. That if I cannot give anymore, just to say so. Because we had a wonderful friend, but he never went home. He stayed so late. And once I said to my daughter, why doesn't he come anymore? And I said, because when he comes, he stays so late that I stopped inviting him. And she said, Mom, wouldn't it have been kinder to say, forgive me, but I can't keep inviting you because you don't go home? Wouldn't it have been kinder than just dropping in? And so I learned. The learning is forever. Any more questions?
Say more about how you cured yourself from lupus, because it's supposed to be incurable.
Do you remember this Shakespeare saying, the fault there abroad us lies not in the stars, but in ourselves that we are underlings. And it's not only the lupus that I had to cure, but as I promised David, I would also speak of when I had my stroke. Because I was given, when I had the stroke, because I didn't listen, the doctor said, be careful with this pill. You will become lightheaded. I had no idea what lightheaded meant. I thought it meant happy. I should have asked him. I should have said medical terms, explain it please. And he would have said you might faint. I wouldn't have gone to New York on that day. But I did. And suddenly my body fell. And I lay on the sidewalk, and people gathered around me. And a woman, a lovely woman, said, we called the ambulance, but things are broken maybe, because you fell on the pavement. Promise me you will scream if they hurt you, because then they'll be more careful. But I knew I don't get hurt. I figured they'd have some bruises. I didn't know that my right shoulder was broken and my right hip was broken. So they gave me, it seems I screamed a lot, and it took days before I woke up. Because the lucky thing was it happened in New York, and they took me to the hospital where there was a wonderful woman doctor who, according to, first of all, she was a woman and she was black, which meant she had to be better than any white man because the odds against her becoming a famous doctor were against her. So when I found out she was a woman and she was black, I knew I would get cured. But I didn't find that out until afterwards, when we hugged each other when I met her. And what happened was, when I woke up after days of nightmares and knowing I could never walk again, my children had been there when the doctor came in. And they said, she can always use a wheelchair, but fix her arm first because she's an artist. And if you can't fix her shoulder, she can never do artwork again. And this wonderful doctor fixed both. And in my nightmares of medication, I knew that I could never walk again and I could never paint or draw again. And one day I woke up, and this is going to be about gratitude. I woke up and suddenly the world was clear. And I could see, and I said, today I'm going to feel gratitude. Only gratitude that I'm alive. And at the night table there was paper and a pen. And I moved my arm and it moved. And I took the paper and the pen. And I wrote my name, not my legal name, which is Hedy Page, but the name I use for signing artwork, H. Pagramansky, which is long and hard. And it worked. And I thought because I have gratitude, my arm works. What if I wake up every morning from now on and the first thing I feel is gratitude? When I wake up in the morning, in normal life, I listen to the weather report and I pick the correct clothes from my closet. What if I don't anymore? What if I first pick out gratitude? What kind of a garment would that be? It would be like a garment that covers so that nobody can tell if I gained weight or lost weight. And it should be brown. It should be beige, because when I paint, there is no white person, and there is no black person, and there is no brown person. Every face I do begins with a shade of brown, because there is no white. It would be Casper the Ghost. There is no black. I couldn't do highlights and shadows. The basic color for all of us is a shade of brown. And I thought, I will have a load of garment bags in my closet, and each garment bag says gratitude. And I give all of you this gift. Wake up in the morning and take one of those bags from me and put it on. And when you begin with a brown bag, change the shade. But it's not going to be white or black, because you're not either of those. And gratitude is for all of us. Okay. David, did I do what you wanted me to do? Did I speak of why I feel? By the way, I paint, I walk because of gratitude. Thank you.